Affecting our evolution starts within. Now, by within, I don't mean inside the body, but inside the spirit, inside the mind, inside the intelligence, inside the soul. Now, when I say within, I'm referring to our inherent nature, that inherent intelligence just behind everything that we're a part of. Now, external evolution is the evolution of the body, of our species, of, well, really any species. This kind of evolution can be affected by our choices once a species becomes self-aware. In our case, we are self-aware. We choose, we act. We're not motivated simply by survival. We are motivated by things that are deeper, things that are more intrinsic to choice, more intrinsic to the kind of person we choose to be within our species, the kind of individual we choose to be, even perhaps separate from our species, the human race. Now, when we look at things that affect evolution as a whole, the reason it starts within is because in order for us to have a positive influence, on the generations to come and overall in our overarching evolution, we have to truly start to know each other. We have to really consider each other more than we do now. Now, I see it all the time. I'm in college and I work at a grocery store. I see people that are together, but not really aware of who each other is. A lot of people that I see together, the exchanges that they have, I can tell that there's constantly new things that both of them should have known about each other just being revealed in the moment, despite them having been together for decades or 8 years or maybe even 5 years. I've observed this in my own family members and how they don't really talk about each other's necessarily views or feelings towards reality in the world that they hold. Even if they don't hold any strong feelings about reality, about God, or whether it exists or doesn't exist, or whether reality is mostly our perception or really concrete, even if you don't hold a view on it, you should know somebody that you're close to, their opinion on it, their feelings about it, their nature, the nature of the individual that they are, that they've chosen to be. Now, I see people in relationships, and it's been over 1.5 years since I've been in a relationship, and that is because I began to change and truly look for something that wasn't just not only physical but more spiritual and intellectual. I've been looking for that for quite a while, but I was willing to settle before. Now I'm not willing to settle because I saw this in other human beings, that people often look for somebody to be alone with. That okay, they're next to them. They sleep with them. They talk about everyday things, and they might do almost everything together. But they never really get close to the perceptions that person has about the universe, or the perceptions that person has about themselves and other people. Now, this isn't true for everyone, but I see this as being far more common than somebody knowing their spouse inside and out, or their brother and sister inside and out. And truly getting to the heart of somebody, who somebody is knowing them beyond the flesh, knowing them beyond their social status, their job, what they do with you. And the sad truth is that the reason why people don't do this very often, not often enough anyway, is because we don't even really know ourselves. We don't consider the universe often enough. We don't try to really look within and see who we are past our identity that wields the ego. And ego is a slave to the identity. The identity is just the impressions that we've taken and accept and kind of pick and choose. But really, it's a lot of the impressions that come in, and if we're not aware of what impressions we're choosing from the outside world, from other people, then our identity is made up without any agency on our part at all. And this is incredibly unfortunate because as human beings, we have the ability to craft ourselves. We have the ability to craft who we are as a person, where we're going as a person, how we think, how we engage with the world, how we react to the world, if we react to it. And what the purpose of life is. We have the ability to choose all of these things. We even have the ability to be completely peaceful, even if we're on a battlefield. But we are not aware of the impressions that we get from the external world. So we take them in naturally, passively, and they become us. And most people eventually become an identity of the world's making, without having affected it nearly at all. Completely controlled by genetics, social influences, maybe even spiritual and religious influences from family members or friends, and the kind of culture they grew up in. And these impressions seem to create an identity, a unique and individualized identity. But really, all they do is create a series of mirrors that are at slightly different angles. And then that's what creates a person. And it's a shame because deep down, in that soul, in the heart of hearts of a human being, in the lotus in the center of the heart, human beings are, even if their identity is composed of completely mirrored impressions from the world, we are still something deep down. Every single human being is something completely different than impressions deep down, completely different than the identity that is reflected onto us deep down, in our heart of hearts, in the very being that we are, that we call the soul. We are something. We're born that something. We're born with that uniqueness that is individual to every single soul, but most people don't try to find it. They accept the universe and reality and society at face value, and they never have the urge, or almost never, as far as the amount of people. And even if a person does reflect on themselves for some time, usually they spend the majority of their life just going away from that, initial spur of spirituality. Most people don't find that inherent essence that makes them an individual beyond the social identity. And unfortunately, the intellect itself is a great tool. It can cut through all kinds of things. It can divide one thing from another. It can say, this is wonderful for this reason, this is bad because of this reason, and then most of everything is gray. And it can teach us how to dissect any situation in the world around us. But ultimately, if we don't allow it to teach without bias, if we don't allow it to wield itself in a way, and without bias, but without an inherent ego. The ego is the biggest crippling aspect to the intellect, because a crippling aspect of human being to the intellect, because it actually restrains the intellect. So the ego keeps the intellect in chains, so it can't do as much. And our identity that wields the intellect does not always cut the right things, does not always make the right decisions, does not always try and take apart reality in a way that is completely based on what reality is. Instead, we try and prove to ourselves that reality is the way we want it to be, the way that we want to believe it is. So when identity wields the intellect and ego chains it, how can we possibly use our human intelligence to become anything else but the influences that are around us? And we cannot. It is almost impossible. That is why we must truly find out who we are. Meditate, but not only meditate, consider yourself. What is the nature of the intelligence just behind all the decisions I'm making? Just behind all of the cravings or aversions? Just behind all of the preferences in politics and religion, or different foods you like or hate, or different kinds of people you like and hate, or your ideas about different cultures. Find what is just behind all of these value judgments, and keep on following that string all the way back to yourself. You will find yourself very far behind all of these things that we create because we were created by society. And then when we follow that string and find ourselves, there is an individualized soul within that is almost breathtaking, that doesn't look like us physically, that doesn't feel like we feel just based on the identity and emotions that we are very on ground level with the universe in everyday life. It feels like more because it is more, because it's a piece of infinity. It is a piece of the thing that we can call God or the source, but it is the thread that leads to everything else as well. Each soul is individualized for sure. It is far back and it is individualized for sure. But it also is connected in a way to every other piece of infinity. And the thing about infinity is that it just keeps going. And once we reach back and find ourselves behind all of this BS, behind all of this bullshit, then we start to realize that nobody can really influence us if we don't want them to. We aren't forced to feel any singular emotion. We aren't forced to be this kind of person, that kind of person. There are always choices, and there are choices that can be made. Sometimes we can't control our external environment, but we can control our internal environment absolutely. Without an effect that is forced upon us from the external world. Learn how to affect your own internal environment. And the more people who do that, the more people who accept this responsibility for themselves, for their own true identity, their soul, the more people that accept this journey, their piece of the grander journey, then the more will be much quicker in our spiritual evolution, of course. But what goes along with that is physical evolution. They collaborate. Our physical evolution and our internal mental evolution as a human being, as an individual, as a society, even a collection of individuals, will become more individualized once we start really controlling our internal environment. And then, of course, we'll still have societies. There'll be collections of actual individuals. And then as that increases towards higher and higher consciousness and towards joy, towards contentment, towards true knowledge and true intellect, true experience of the world and everything else that it's a part of, the universe, then our physical evolution will seem not only quick, but it will seem like it's so obvious. Why didn't we do this all along? And then as our minds change, as our bodies change, the possibilities are endless. We will become one in a way that we could never have imagined before. And it isn't about forcing anybody to be this or that. It isn't about forcing even yourself. It's just about becoming. And then as you become a true individual, and as you reach towards liberation, towards enlightenment, and you want to do this once you truly gain agency within yourself, then everybody will become far more likely to cooperate and truly appreciate each other and truly know each other. The everyday conversations won't be about, how was your day? Is that person still bothering you? Is your boss still being mean to you? It'll be about, what is your opinion on this? My own reflections on that is this. How do you really consider your soul? And how do you discern the different parts of your soul, or is it possible to think of that non-dual state even while in duality? These kinds of conversations will be far more prevalent, whereas the conversations on fashion and the bad things about the current president or the current mayor or even a general that if you're on an army base, there probably won't be nearly as big armies because it wouldn't be necessary. But if you're on an army base, it won't be about all of these little things that we usually hear from people. It'll be about things that are behind the material reality that we're in. And the thing about human beings is that, and the thing about really anything, as far as life itself, you try to escape your boundaries. And then once you escape those boundaries, you're like, you feel good for a while. Then you try to escape those boundaries. So if you're stuck in a cell, then you escape that cell. Let's say you got the whole run of the prison. And you're like, okay, well, I want to get out of this prison. So then you expand to having the whole run of the city. Then you want to expand further and further and further. And with the soul is that influence that drives us towards that shows us that confines aren't the state of reality that we have to accept. And the soul will constantly push us towards pushing those boundaries. And the way to push those boundaries ultimately isn't about the external world or the space that we have to roam around in. It's about breaking the internal boundaries that we place with our ego, with our identity, with our fears and desires. Once we break those boundaries again and again and again, our internal landscape will be infinite. So, this has been a video about affecting evolution, and I'm going to title it "Affecting Evolution Starts Within." And this has been a collaboration of many ideas that I have. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a really interesting journey these last few days. I've kind of evolved spiritually in a way that I didn't expect, and it has been because of some spiritual ideas that I've been introduced to that I wasn't before, along the same path that I've always been on. But my boundaries are being pushed, and I feel better. I feel more whole, and I'm sure I'll push the boundaries even more. I mean, that's what we're here to do. I mean, that's what our inherent nature is. So I hope that you push your own boundaries and break beyond your spiritual and societal and cultural and even monetary boundaries. I hope you keep on pushing those boundaries too until you finally break down all the walls that you hit infinity. Because that's where we're headed. That's despite all the negativity we see in the world, despite all the pain and suffering, it's easy to only look at the bad in the world as it is now. Because we're right in this time, and everything that we consider as bad or is bad is in our direct experience. It's not about hearing about something that was 20 years ago or in World War I or in the 1800s. We're right in the middle of it. But my own opinion is that we as humanity, we're growing, we're getting better. I think that we're truly getting better. And I hope that you can see it too. And I hope that you can address these things within that I'm encouraging you to address, even though I've been taught by gurus and yogis through the research that I've done and the practices that I've done. And I've crafted my own spiritual path, even though I've learned from these people, and I hope that you craft yours as well. Don't just take somebody's word for it. Experiment. Delve deep. So, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. If you want to leave a comment, you agree, disagree, or you just want to say something in general, shoot it down in the comment section below. I'd really appreciate it. I tried to get to all comments, but this last week I haven't been responding to a lot of them because it's just been a really crazy week spiritually. It's been a good week, just crazy. But I'll definitely try to get to as many comments as I can in the future. And hey, y'all have a great day, and never forget, you can control your internal environment and help the evolution of man, starting with you.